When discussing the demon Valac, there is often confusion about his rank and attributes. While popular culture, particularly horror films, has made him a familiar name, the reality found in older texts is more complex and, in some cases, contradictory. To begin with, Valac is not a marquis, as sometimes claimed, but rather holds the rank of president within the demonic hierarchy, a position considered lower than marquis. The familiarity of his name today comes largely from modern adaptations. Yet, centuries before cinema, Valac existed in the annals of demonology, his identity shaped and reshaped by different manuscripts and translations. To understand who this entity is and how he came to occupy his place within the Goetic tradition, one must first explore the concept of Goetic demons themselves. The concept of Goetic demons. When scholars and occultists refer to Goetic demons, they are most often speaking of the 72 spirits listed in the Ars Goetia, the first section of the Lesser Key of Solomon. This 17th century grimoire is one of the most famous works of Western demonology and claims these entities were once bound and commanded by King Solomon of Israel. But the Lesser Key did not invent these beings. The roots go much deeper. To trace them, one must go back to a much older text, the Testament of Solomon. This work, which claims to be authored by Solomon himself, likely originated between the 1st and 11th centuries CE. It tells how Solomon, gifted with a magical ring by God, was able to summon and control demons. Within its pages, Solomon conducts dialogues with various spirits, learning their abilities and how they could be compelled into service. Though scholars doubt its authenticity as a biblical text, the Testament of Solomon is considered the foundation of later grimoires, setting the stage for how demons were catalogued and described in subsequent centuries. By the 15th century, additional manuscripts emerged, expanding and reshaping this demonological tradition. These later works sometimes claim to be Solomonic, but their true authorship remains obscure. They introduced new lists of spirits, often inconsistent with earlier accounts. Some demons seem to have been adapted from older pagan deities, reinterpreted through a Christian lens, while others appear to have been entirely new inventions or drawn from oral traditions now lost. The first appearance of Valac. Valak's earliest identifiable appearance occurs in a 15th century grimoire known as the Liber Officiorum Spirituum, Book of the Office of Spirits. This text expands upon earlier manuscripts, listing 82 spirits, more than many other grimoires of the time. Here, however, Valac does not appear under the name familiar today. Instead, he shows up twice, under the names Kulor and Dulis. Oddly, these are treated as separate entities in the manuscript, yet their descriptions are nearly identical. Kulor is described as a great prince, appearing like a child with hawk-like wings, riding a two-headed dragon, and capable of revealing hidden treasures. Dulis is likewise portrayed as a child with angelic wings, riding a two-headed dragon, revealing hidden treasures, and commanding serpents. In addition, Dulis is said to govern 20 legions of spirits and to provide household familiars. Because their descriptions align so closely, many scholars and later editors concluded that Kulor and Dulis were simply duplicate entries, perhaps drawn from separate drafts or sources that were accidentally merged. Later, grimoires consolidated them into one being, now called Valac. The Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. The next important appearance of this entity is in the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, also from the 15th century. This shorter list of spirits includes only 11 names, yet among them is Valac, whose description matches that of Kulor and Dulis. Here, Valac is portrayed as a boy with angelic wings riding a two-headed dragon, a revealer of hidden treasures, a provider of serpents, a commander of 26 legions of spirits. A notable change in this text is his rank. Whereas Kulor and Dulis had been called princes, the Munich manual lists Valac as a president, a demotion within the demonic hierarchy. This lower rank would remain consistent in every later grimoire, pseudo-monarchia, demonum. In the 16th century, Dutch physician and occultist Johann Weyer compiled his pseudo-monarchia demonum, listing 69 demons. This work is essentially an edited collection based on earlier grimoires. Here, the spirit appears as Valac, without the final H. His description remains consistent with earlier accounts, though he now commands 30 legions of spirits. Thus, his following appears to grow with each retelling. The Ars Goetia. The most famous account of Valac comes from the Ars Goetia, the first book of the Lesser Key of Solomon, compiled in the 17th century. This text solidified his place among the 72 spirits of Solomon, a list that has deeply influenced Western occultism. In the Ars Goetia, Valac is listed as the 62nd spirit. His name appears in multiple variations: Valac, Valak, Volak, Valu, Valix, or even Falak. His description is almost identical to earlier portrayals: a child with angelic wings, riding a two-headed dragon, capable of revealing hidden treasures, able to bring forth serpents, governing 30 to 38 legions of spirits, depending on the manuscript. Thus, across centuries, his form and abilities remain remarkably consistent, even as his name, legion count, and rank shift. The Seal of Valak. The Ars Goetia also preserves the Seal of Valak, a magical sigil intended for use in summoning rituals. According to Solomonic tradition, seals must be inscribed on specific metals corresponding to the demon's rank. Since Valac is a president, his seal would be inscribed on Mercury. The seal functioned as a binding mark, ensuring the spirit's obedience when summoned. Thomas Rudd's adversarial angels. One unique variation of the Ars Goetia comes from Thomas Rudd, a 17th century English mathematician and military engineer. In his manuscript, each Goetic demon is paired with an opposing angel, drawn from the 72 angels of the Shem HaMephorash. These angels serve as the antidote or counterbalance to the demons, invoked first during rituals to maintain control. For Valak, the adversarial angel is named Iahel, Jahel. Associated with wisdom, tranquility, modesty, and virtue, Iahel represents a symbolic foil to Valak's serpents and treasures. This juxtaposition reflects the dualistic worldview of many occult systems, where every force has an equal and opposite counterpart. Possible pagan origins. Unlike some Goetic demons, Valak does not have a clearly traceable link to a pre-Christian deity. Many scholars consider him a purely grimoire-based creation. However, some have speculated about possible connections. One candidate is the Slavic god Veles, associated with earth, water, wealth, trickery, and the underworld. Veles sometimes appears in dragon or serpent form, which could echo Valak's iconography of serpents and two-headed dragons. His name also bears resemblance to some of Valak's earlier variants, such as Volos or Volak. Despite these parallels, the link is tenuous. Veles' transformation under Christianization is well documented, and no direct evidence connects him to Valak. Still, the similarities highlight how motifs of serpents, dragons, and treasure recur across different mythologies, legion counts, and symbolism. One curious aspect of Valak's descriptions is the fluctuating number of legions he commands: 13, 20, 26, 30, or even 38, depending on the manuscript. If one accepts the calculation of a legion as 6,666 spirits, as mentioned in Pseudo-Monarchia Demonum, Valac at his height could command over 250,000 lesser demons. Whether these numbers are symbolic or literal is open to debate. The concept of legions in demonology often mirrors the Roman military structure, suggesting organization, discipline, and overwhelming numbers rather than exact arithmetic. Later interpretations. In the 19th century, Colin de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal included Valac, repeating much of the established description, but adding that he also knows the positions of the planets. This attribution may reflect the blending of astrological lore with demonology in the 18th and 19th centuries. By this time, however, Valac was a relatively obscure figure, just one among dozens of similar Goetic demons. His resurgence into popular imagination would not occur until centuries later, when modern media reimagined him for fictional narratives. Conclusion. Valak's story is emblematic of how occult traditions evolve. From uncertain origins in the Liber Officiorum Spirituum as Kulor and Dulis, to consolidation as Valac, to canonization in the Ars Goetia as Valak, his identity has shifted but remained recognizable. Always depicted as a winged child riding a two-headed dragon, always associated with serpents and hidden treasure, Valac represents both the continuity and the fluidity of Western demonology. His role as a president, commanding legions and revealing what is hidden, marks him as a spirit of knowledge and guardianship over that which is concealed. Whether viewed as a relic of medieval imagination, a symbol of hidden truths, or a cautionary figure in folklore, Valac endures as one of the more fascinating names within the long tradition of Goetic demons.